A slow metabolism causes you to gain body fat and therefore gain weight. Wrong. Brown fat draws energy from your dangerous fat. So here is good fat, brown fat fighting bad fat. And the great news is that there are foods that can activate that brown fat energy burning system. There was a metabolism study in which they gave people 2 to eat before lunch every day over 4 weeks. Just 2, and it actually shrank your waistline. Intermittent fasting, which is your metabolic fat burning period, is when you're so you think you're not exercising, you can't be burning fat. Wrong. You're actually burning fat when you're something very easy they can do that can help them burn down extra body fat. It's known as I was walking around assuming certain things about metabolism were just true. For example, I had assumed myself that some people are born with a fast metabolism and they're thin as a stick. They are seemingly can eat anything and not gain weight. And some people have a slower metabolism. How many people have heard, oh, my sister was lucky. She has a fast metabolism. And unfortunately, I was born with a slow metabolism. I've struggled with food my whole life. And, I've always had difficulty with my weight. That's a very common idea. That's one myth I walked around with. The second thing I walked around with that, if you've ever seen a teenage kid, and, the three of us have all teenage boys before, like when you reach that 15, 16-year-old level, you're eating 2 or 3 dinners, you're bouncing off the wall with energy, playing sports, running around like crazy. And at that point, and especially if you have your own teenagers, you would actually say, man, that kid's metabolism must be going through the roof as they grow, as they get bigger. That's what we don't always assume. The third thing that I always assumed, and I think most people do, is that once you kind of get into adulthood, 20, 30, 40, right there is really this inflection point where things start to be not so good for you metabolism wise. And the idea is that when you're heading towards middle age and then enter middle age, things are going to slow down by themselves. And that's why people say, oh, I've hit 40, I've hit 50. Unfortunately, my metabolism is now against me. There's nothing I can do about it. I just got to buy new clothes, or get used to my shape in the mirror. And that's a bummer. And then people give up and they're like, well, it's not going to make a difference anyway. I'm just going to eat whatever I want now. So that's what I always assume. Now, and then finally, the last thing that I assumed about metabolism is that a slow metabolism causes you to gain body fat and therefore gain weight. And then, and I always assumed that that's how it worked, right? So these 4 myths I just told you about were completely upended, completely upended. They're all false. They're all not true. Okay. From a research study that was a groundbreaking research study that was just published about 2 years ago now. Okay. And in this research study, there was a researcher named Herman Ponzer working at Duke University in the United States. He worked with 90 other colleagues from 20 countries, and they took 6,000 people from across 20 different countries. And think about it, 20 different countries. You're talking about different geographies, different dietary patterns, different cultures. Everything is different, right? And and what they did, though, that was really remarkable, is they studied people among the 6,000 from 1 week old, that's fresh out of the oven. The bun is just out of the oven, all the way to 90 years old. Now you're talking about the end of the human lifespan for most people, if you can make it that long, all right? And they studied everybody's metabolism in exactly the same way. The question was, what does human metabolism really look like when you study everybody from 1 week old to 90-year-old? Never been done before, okay? And here's the other astounding thing. It's important to understand how this study was done because, for you to really understand the results, they studied everybody in exactly the same way. They gave them a drink of water. And you're going, wait a minute, why would water make a difference? How would you even measure metabolism? Well, water is H2O, right? Everyone knows that just from watching cartoons when you're a kid. H is hydrogen, O is oxygen. And what these researchers did is they tweaked the hydrogen and they tweaked the oxygen in the lab so you could measure it. All right. Now, when you drink the water, you can measure from the breath, what you exhale. You can measure from the blood, what you would remove with a blood draw, or you can measure in the urine, what you pee out. You can measure the H and the O, and what the levels are when they come out of your body reflect your metabolism. Like that's basically one way of calculating a metabolism. 1 week old to 90 years old, 6,000 people, 20 countries, 90 researchers diving on this to say, what is the result, right? So what do you think? So what happened when they got their first results, the results of the metabolism was all over the map, just like you'd expect. Yeah, everyone's got a different metabolism. But because we live in the age of supercomputing, what these researchers were able to do, and what really broke the glass ceiling on this, is they said, wait a minute, we know what every individual's height is, we know their age, we know their gender, male or female, and we know how much body fat they're supposed to have physiologically for their height and age and weight and gender. So what they did is they developed an algorithm. So this is, like people develop apps. So basically this is taking something that can wind up being as simple as an app, but it's very complicated behind the scenes. And for every one of these 6,000 people, they subtracted the effect of excess body fat for their height, their age, their weight, their gender. All right. Because everyone was different. So when they removed the effect of excess body fat and measured metabolism, all right, just from the data, from the numbers, guess what? The real metabolism rose right to the surface. And if you want to say what it was that the impact on the researchers, it's like pulling off the cloak for the statue of David. Like suddenly you realize what human metabolism really looked like from 1 week old to 90 years old. And there's only 4 stages of metabolism that we all go through. And what this means is that they discovered how our bodies are intrinsically hardwired, right? If you're an ornithologist and you're studying birds, if you're a zoologist and you're studying tigers, you're going to be paying attention and just trying to understand what is actually happening. What's the natural cycle of these animals? And so what they did is they studied what is the natural history, the hardwiring of how our human metabolism behaves, and we all go through 4 phases, every single one of us. And this is the beginning of where we began overturning every single one of those ideas that I told you I thought I was sure was right. Every single one of them turned out to be wrong, and that wrongness actually gives us like a eureka that our metabolism isn't our fate per se, but that we can actually do things to improve our metabolism.
Let's talk about some amazing things about body fat that occur long before you worry about it. And that is, body fat begins when you're in the womb. So when your dad's sperm met your mom's egg and they kind of combined and started to create little ball of cells and started to create the shape of a human, some of the first tissues that form are blood vessels, because we need a good circulation for every organ that forms. Nerves that also form, and nerves run along with blood vessels. And the third tissue that forms is fat, adipose tissue. So we've got little globules of fat. You had fat long before you had a face to feed it, number one. Number two is that fat actually surrounds blood vessels and also is connected to nerves. And remember, we just talked a little bit earlier about this. It's a endocrine organ. It produces hormones that supports the function of our organs that are going to form later on. So this is way before you're even born. Number two, when you're born, think about it. Every culture in the world, every country in the world will appreciate the wonderful sight of a newborn, pudgy, chubby. They've got arms and legs that look like the balloon animals that you twist, right? Big chubby cheeks, right? And in fact, fat in babies is something that we can associate with health. Look at how cute that baby is, right? If you actually saw a baby at birth that looked like a fashion model, chiseled jaw, thin, thick arms and legs, you'd be really worried with that baby. And you'd be right. You'd think there was something wrong with that baby. And so, number one, like just from the get-go, got to realize that, fat actually has a role long before you peek at it in a mirror or step on a scale. And that's really a wonderful thing. And what happens is that as we grow up from that pudgy little baby, our fat starts to redistribute in ways. Now, boys and girls, actually, when you're 5, 7, 8, actually all track along pretty similarly. And the three kinds of fat, which is, subcutaneous fat, which is subcutaneous under the skin, close, you can see it. Visceral fat, which we need some of, inside our gut. Viscera means gut. So the fat in our gut, and also some brown fat, which is we can talk about, which is a third kind of fat. Most visceral fat and subcutaneous fat, the subcutaneous fat is the muffin, all right, in your waistline. Visceral fat you can't see. That's the yellow stuff hanging off the chicken when you actually open it up, all right? And then brown fat is something that we only really started to appreciate actually exists in humans, is paper thin, and it's not close to the skin. You can't see it. It's close to the bone. It's paper thin, and it's around your neck. It's behind your breastbone. It's under your arms, a little bit in your back, a little bit in your belly, and they all form different things.
So healthy levels of fat are perfectly fine. They do all these wonderful things like the fuel cell and the cushion. But once you go beyond that, you start to disrupt the organ function, the endocrine function. You start to disrupt, cause inflammation, all kinds of bad things. So even skinny people need to worry about excess harmful body fat. Now, but that's not that's not a gigantic surprise. I mean, I think people have been talking about that. The real surprise is there's a third kind of fat, and I talk about this in my new book, Eat to Beat Your Diet. It's called brown fat. Now, brown fat is not wiggly jiggly, and it's not under the skin. It's not subcutaneous. You can't even see it. Brown fat is not. It's brown fat is paper thin, wafer thin, and it's amazing because it's not near the surface. You cannot see it. It is actually pressed along your neck. It's under your chest. It's under your arms like a bra strap, a little bit behind your back and between your shoulder blades, and a little bit in your belly. And this brown fat, by the way, it serves a very specific function. It is a fuel cell, a space heater. It generates heat by burning energy. Okay. And I give, for the people watching this, I have a little show and tell thing because this is what I've been trying to teach people. This is what brown fat is like, this thin, paper thin fat. It is like this. This is a torch. When your brown fat is lit, it does this. All right. It actually blows up a flame. All right. This is what brown fat does when you light up the brown fat. And in order to power this flame, it's got to draw energy from someplace. And that energy it draws from, that fuel it draws from in order to create that flame, that heat, is that brown fat, thin fat, pressed down, invisible fat, draws that energy from your dangerous fat, your extra visceral fat, and your subcutaneous fat. So here is good fat, brown fat, fighting bad fat when it's in excess. And this is like a completely new conceptualization. And the great news is that there are foods that can activate that brown fat energy burning system.
I'm trying to give people something very easy they can do that can help them burn down extra body fat. And that is this. It's known as intermittent fasting, which sounds complicated and out of reach for most people. But I'm going to show you what I do and what anybody can do to get a little bit more fasting time. Because what happens is when you're fasting, meaning not eating, your body switches metabolism from storing fuel into the fuel tank to burning fuel out of the fuel tank. So when you're not eating, you're actually burning fuel. All right. And that's just a way that's part of that hardwiring. So how do you do this? Well, when you're sleeping, you're not eating. So when you're sleeping, you're fasting. And you're supposed to sleep 8 hours a day. That's true, beneficial for all kinds of reasons. So that's the best way to take advantage and get started, jumpstart your intermittent fasting, which is your metabolic fat burning period, is when you're sleeping. So, you think sleeping, you're not exercising, you can't be burning fat. Wrong. You are actually burning fat when you're sleeping. Flat in the sack, you are actually burning body fat. Okay, so how do you actually extend that fat burning period? Okay, very, very, very easy. Here's what you do. So we're talking about sleep. So before going to sleep, the night before, here's what you do to get extra time that you're not eating. Let's say most people eat dinner at 7 o'clock. Let's say most people eat for about an hour. I know it's different in Spain and Italy and Greece, but let's say for most people, you eat dinner at 7, you're done by 8 o'clock. When you put your dishes away at 8, that's it. Don't eat again. Let's say you go to bed at 11. You just gained 3 extra hours of fasting, non-eating time, i.e. fat burning time. All right.
Now, so then let's say you're going to sleep 8 hours. That's 3 hours from putting the dishes away to the time you sleep and wake up in the morning. That's 3 plus 8. That's 11 hours of fat burning time you've gained just by that simple act of not eating after dinner. Okay. So that's a habit that, that late night snacks, just stop it. Don't do it. When the dish is away, you're done for the day. Don't worry. You're going to be fine. Right. And then when you get up in the morning, don't do what our moms taught us to do. Like when I was growing up, my mom always told me, hurry up and get out of bed, roll down, eat some breakfast. You need to get enough nutrition in so you can go to school and learn, and have enough energy for the day. Rubbish. Not necessarily true. When you get up in the morning, you don't need breakfast is not the most important meal of the day because you've loaded up on fuel the night before. So in fact, what happens is that what I tell people to do to extend their fasting time, their fat burning time, is when you get up in the morning, take your time getting ready. Take your time getting a shower, getting dressed, preparing.
Journaling.
When you whatever you're doing, making the bed, and then when you actually get journaling, when you go down, to your kitchen, don't eat right away. Check your email, maybe go out for a walk, read a couple of pages of a book, catch up on the news, wait for at least 1 hour before you eat anything. Okay, so now let's do the math. Dinner, dishes in the sink, 3 hours to bedtime, 3 hours of fasting, and 8 hours of sleep, 11 hours of fasting, 3 plus 8. Now you extend it 1 more hour in the morning. It's not asking a lot before you eat anything. Okay, that's 11 plus 1, 12 hours. Now, 12 out of 24 hours, 50% of your day you have spent burning down body fat. Boom. That is my tip. If you want to actually flip the script on gaining weight and you want to use your body to do what it wants to do naturally, which is burn down extra body fat without going on a crazy diet and taking supplements and doing all kinds of crazy things or cold plunges or whatever, there is actually a simple way that anybody can do it. No food after dinner and wait for an hour after you get up before you eat. And obviously when you eat, you got to eat modestly and you want to eat good quality food. The way that actually you can turn on and get rid of harmful body fat, the easiest way is actually to activate thermogenesis. Basically, that's just flipping the switch so that your brown fat starts to fire up. I showed you a little lighter, a torch, but actually, if you think about a gas stove, which most people have in their kitchens or their homes, right? What do? You turn on the handle and it goes click, 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 whoosh, right? That's what certain foods can actually do. When you're eating certain foods, it actually sends signals to your brown fat and it goes whoosh. And once it goes whoosh, just like your stove, it requires fuel to keep that flame going. Where's it going to draw that fuel from? It's going to draw it from your harmful fat. So that's how you burn it down. So that's one basic mechanism, but it gets much more interesting than that for thermogenesis. For example, hot chili peppers, which I happen to like spicy food. But everyone knows what happens when you eat something spicy like a chili pepper. Pepper flakes you put on your pizza. That's a great example, right? In fact, I have a little sample here. Let me just show you. I just happen to be in front of a desk so I can show you this stuff. Look at that.
Oh, yeah,
kind of
beautiful.
Stuff, right? And it comes off of a plant like that. Okay. So what happens is that when you put it on your tongue, you feel the burn, the zing. And what's happening is that there's a bioactive called capsaicin. It actually is also, there's another family called capsinoids. They're all that chemical family. And like a key that fits into a lock, your tongue has the lock. It's a receptor for capsaicin. It's a capsaicin receptor. There's a name for it, by the way. I know I'll be giving lots of easy to understand analogies for your listeners, viewers, but all right, we got to dive in and be a little bit of a scientist here. That receptor is called TRPV1. And it's not only all over our tongue, but it actually is in our esophagus, in our stomach, in our guts, all the way down to our intestines. And it's also at the very tail end, even on our rectum. So you've heard that saying, burning on the way in and burning on the way out.
Yep.
Hey, you know what? That's because of TRPV1, the receptor. But here's the interesting thing, the connection between body fat and thermogenesis. Hot chili pepper on your tongue, lock, the key fits into the lock, the TRPV1 receptor. As soon as that happens, you feel, it's spicy. Your tongue sends a text message to your brain, amazingly. And it tells your brain to do two things. One is to release endorphins. Endorphins are the feel-good hormones, which is why some people really are addicted to eating spicy food. I gotta have me some more spicy food. Now, the other thing that, and not everybody has the same degree of response. So some people, it's just way too spicy. They have too many receptors. They have the TRPV1 is so dense in their tongue that even a little spice is overwhelming. Okay. But the second thing that the capsaicin from chili peppers on the tongue can activate with the text message to your brain, it can release norepinephrine. Okay. Norepinephrine is a flight or fight hormone. So basically put up your dukes, all right, or run away. Okay. And what happens is that, and what happens when you do that? Your eyes dilate, you start to sweat, right? And remember, people eating spicy food, they often sweat and they turn red, right? You start breathing a little bit faster. That's what's happening. And the next time you eat something spicy, I think you and I talked about this when we were in person last year. But, this is what's amazing. If you eat something spicy and you just put yourself, like, meditate a little bit, go into a quiet place and pay attention to your body, you will literally feel your brain, your activated brain, your texted brain releasing norepinephrine. You'll feel it running down the side of your neck because the norepinephrine is going down nerves. You will actually feel that sensation happening, the current going down. And it goes right down to the brown fat that's pressed around the side of your neck to light up that flame. That's called thermogenesis. That signal norepinephrine binds to a receptor on the top of your brown fat. It's called UCP1. Don't worry about the names. But what that UCP1 does, another lock and key on top of your brown fat, is it then ignites your burner on your stove, and then whoosh, it goes up. And now, in order to keep that flame going, it's got to draw the energy down. Right, so that's an example of chili peppers found in both Mediterranean cuisine, Asian cuisine, all kinds of Asian cuisines that actually are part of this culinary traditions that are very much part of our humanity. And that's just one example of an ingredient and a mechanism. There's other mechanisms that can work as well. But I thought I would start with thermogenesis. Here's one of my favorite fruits. It's a pear. Okay. And it's a medium-sized pear. And pears are very nutrient dense. It's one of my favorite fruits. They're sweet, but not too sweet. They're not as sweet as a mango. They're not as sweet as a pineapple. And they've got a lot of dietary fiber. They've got 6 grams of dietary fiber. And pears also have a bioactive called chlorogenic acid. Chlorogenic acid is not only found in pears, it's found in apples, it's found in coffee. Mother Nature is very clever. She actually puts a lot of these useful bioactives across multiple food types. But I love pears, and I want to use this, one of the things that a fruit I enjoy eating, to address this. I think it's an extreme interpretation, well-intentioned, about the harms of sugar and fructose. I think as people, we love to either make a food a hero or a villain. And it is true. Sugar, too much sugar, not good for you. But, our brain depends on sugar. Our body can make sugar. And so it's really not fair to basically say, oh, a sweet fruit is really bad. Fruits are very nutrient dense, which is they have sugar for energy. They have fiber for our gut microbiome. They've got bioactives to activate our health defenses and activate our metabolism and activate thermogenesis as well. Here's what you want to do. You want to actually choose foods like fruits that taste great, that are pleasing, that also are nutrient dense and give you all these other factors that are good for your body. So net, you're getting some energy from the fructose and the sugar. You're getting some prebiotic stuff from the dietary fiber, and you're getting a ton of these bioactives to activate your health defenses. You just can't reduce everything to the sweetness of the fruit. That's ridiculous. And I think that it's very important to actually state that. By the way, there was a metabolism study in which they gave people 2 pears to eat before lunch every day, and it actually shrank your waistline by using the chlorogenic acid to burn body fat over 4 weeks. Just 2 pears. Oh, what kind of pears? Bartlett pears and Anjou pears. Read the paper. So again, these are the fascinating things that for anybody to kind of dive in if they're interested. And then, if you really want to find out, well, okay, clinical trial is interesting, but nobody is really doing the randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, multi-center trials on only pears, because that's what people do with pharmaceuticals. It takes millions or billions of dollars to do that. You don't need to know. You don't need that to actually demonstrate the goodness of a pair. But there is a clinical trial. You want to remove clinical trial from that, put epidemiological study. And now you'll find what research has been done looking at pears across big populations to see the correlations with health or disease, either lowering the risk of disease or elevating, improving the levels of health. That's a simple way that anybody with access to a computer, the internet, can begin to dive in and take any ingredient, start to look at it.
Hey, if you like that video, then you're going to love this one. Check it out.